So this is a continuation of the video I made earlier to, well, this is just a follow-up discussion. First question I wanted to ask, why does this type of internet scam seem to be so prominent in West Africa, particularly Nigeria? And I looked on the internet, obviously, and see what anyone else was saying about that, because I've obviously heard that if they've managed to do someone out of something or other, then they've succeeded in life. Uh, yeah, strange philosophy, of course. But anyway, so like a lot of the other reasons that were put down was history of slavery. Well, there's no doubt whatsoever that the African continent certainly had been enslaved by, um, obviously, Western, most definitely European. Slave trade would happen for hundreds of years. And Africa was one of the main targets during what, yes, 16th century through to 18th century, like late into the 19th century, but obviously it was illegal by then in most places. Um, but I mean, how's that? How's that actually a reason exactly? There's two problems with why that isn't really a reason. I mean, first of all, slavery isn't just exclusive to Europeans coming along and enslaving other populations. This goes back way. Romans, Greeks, Egyptians before then. And do any of those countries now? I mean, does this country, like, I'm in Britain, obviously, does British people sort of think, oh yeah, the reason why we should go and hammer other people and do horrible things to them is, like, particularly Italians, it's because the Roman people years ago enslaved us. Don't think so, really. Um, and the other problem with that is like a philosophical problem. Um, there's a guy called Alan Watts who discusses this whole kind of idea of the past motivating the future. Now, he suggests that, in fact, the past doesn't motivate the present or the future. Only if it only does if you decide that it does. Mostly because everything happens now. It's all around the fact that whatever happens now, and the past is an illusion. So it's entirely down to you what you do now that motivates it. So you just use history as an excuse. So I mean, there's a lot of controversy to saying that. I think, like, to putting all of it on just now, because there's certainly some people would say, well, I had really bad things happen to me in the past. They affect my psychology now, so therefore I act as I do. But there's also something to say, well, no, because if you want to take responsibility for things, well, actually, even if you don't, you need to take responsibility for things because you're acting now. Otherwise, you're just a non-human robot. If you're always motivated by some other force than you, then you're not really a real person. You're just a robot. So there's that, and then of course there's poverty. That was mentioned as well. Poverty. Now, again, you can have maybe a little bit of sympathy with this whole poverty idea, because there's no doubt whatsoever that, um, Africa, it certainly is, one of the poorer continents of the world. Certainly regards money. I mean, whether you just want to say money is all that is you're going to count as wealth, then which I have a bit of a disagreement with, because I mean, certainly as far as money is concerned, I don't have sod all. I've got no money at all, but I'd still consider myself to be quite wealthy. And I mean, that's not just because of the country I live in; it's because of my mind. I've got a lot of wealth mentally. Yeah, go back onto the philosophy, of this that I've heard about, that it's the right thing to do to try and screw people out. Well, so yeah, that's, I mean, again, that's another interesting one, actually. Certainly as far as philosophy is concerned, because there's a guy called, Robert Anton Wilson. I can't remember if it's Robert Anton Wilson or if it was Alan Watts. Related this story of a guy called Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was a kind of, I don't know, really want to use the word Satanist exactly if he was that, but he was kind of a radical sort of spirit free thinker kind of person. And you find in a lot of these kinds of semi-cult things that turn up. It's supposed to be about self-actualizing, like finding oneself and learning the secrets of life, basically, something like that. Anyway, like this rich guy turned up, and he wanted to know, you know, his amazing secrets. And so Crowley says to him, "Oh yeah, I'll tell you the most powerful secret that I know. If you give me, I don't know, check for 5,000 or something like that. I can't remember, but a lot of money or something." So he writes him out a check, and Crowley puts it in his pocket and says, "Oh, you won't do that again, will you?" Like, so what I'm saying is that this whole kind of idea that fooling someone into doing something is like good for them or something like that, you know, which I don't think it is. I don't agree with that. Not necessarily just from a moral point of view. There obviously is like moral points of view that you could take on that, whether that's, you know, because I mean, you know, there's two arguments for this. The one argument saying that he was doing something good because he was, and this is the argument I hear on the internet as well, that um, you're fooling someone and that, you know, they're idiots for taking it, and that means that obviously you've done something good because you've helped them get over their stupidity. Well, you know, have you? I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily see that. You know, I don't necessarily see how you've taught anyone anything really. Um, you, I think it's personally, I think it's a justification for just ripping someone off. Right. So is this simply a local version of the confidence trick, the long tradition of aggressive marketing? Now, yeah, these kind of these little West African scammers, they do seem to be exactly like a very kind of tame version of like what we have to deal with all the time throughout society. And there's a lot more sophisticated stuff goes on. I mean, just look at the whole kind of financial situation that the world's in at the moment. You know, I mean, that's one hell of a mega scam. Makes these West African guys look pretty tame. So of course you've got propaganda, and you've got a whole bunch of other kinds of marketing and so on, which, you know, basically is not quite the same, but it runs on on the same basic principle that you're not telling the truth. You're not actually trying to convince someone for their own good. You're trying to convince someone for your good, which they may get a little bit of good out of in the end, but may not necessarily. Is that's never part of the problem. That's never part of the idea. The idea is simply for your benefit, and the idea is to present an image which is then sold on and will then result in you making some kind of financial gain. In if you're presenting a product and so on, and in political things, it's much more subtle than that usually, because you're not making a financial gain. You're making either like a power-based gain or uh, political capital of some kind or other in the ability that you would have to shout down your opponents or to um, basically get the upper hand on anyone else. So, you know, there's that aspect as well, which is all the more reason why people should be a lot more clued up to all kinds of deceptions that go on. And yeah, actually, and that's one of the reasons why I think so many people seem to fall for this sort of thing, because our society at the moment, it doesn't want to allow people to think too much for themselves, which renders them very very vulnerable to these sorts of scams and so forth. Um, and I think, you know, again, you've got two sort of aspects of this. The one aspect is it's good. This is sometimes good that people don't ask questions too much, because they follow orders, they keep the system running, and everything ticks along tickety boo, which is, you know, to a certain extent useful for a society. But of course, on the other hand, there is this problem that makes the society extremely vulnerable to attacks of falsehood of this sort of nature.